Hi guys, it's Kira and Jessie from Plaid, and we are here for tonight's Let's Paint Live. So we are going to teach you in just about an hour how to paint cosmic skies. And those of you that aren't familiar with our Let's Paint Live, it's where we get together on Facebook Live at 7:30, typically the first Thursday of every month. We're a little bit off because of the holiday this month. But it's where we paint along live and we teach you a bunch of different tips and techniques, and it's a part of our larger Let's Paint program. So if you want to check that out, head on over to plaidonline.com/Let's Paint, and we have an entire free online education program. So there's a ton of great content, videos. We've got Andy Jones, Donna Dewberry, a ton of guest artists along with Jessie teaching you how to paint. And if you've never even picked up a paintbrush or you're an expert, there's something for everybody in this program. So tonight, like I mentioned, we're going to teach you how to paint cosmic skies. And if you are just tuning in and maybe you're running a little bit late or you don't have time to paint with us live tonight, don't worry, because you can always watch this video after the live on demand on Facebook, or tomorrow it'll be up on our Plaid's YouTube channel, and you can pause and rewind as you go. So you can paint as you're, at your leisure. At your leisure, thank you. And just have a stress-free time for yourself. You can relax. You can paint with your friends over the weekend.
Definitely.
Sometimes the week gets away from you, or it's Thursday and you're really tired. So make sure you take time for yourself, and you can watch this on demand and pause and rewind.
Definitely.
So also, if you're watching us live, we'd like to hear from you. We want to know where you're painting at, who you're with, if you have any questions or comments, and let us know, and we'll try to answer them back and chat with you while we're painting.
Yeah.
So Jessie's going to get us started, and we'll check back in a little bit.
Okay. All right, so first I'm going to tell you guys what our supplies will be for tonight. So you can see I've got a 12 by 16 canvas here. 12 by 16 canvas. I painted it black ahead of time using pure black, which was on our supply list, and then I let it dry. I've got a flat brush. I've got a toothbrush, which is going to be a really fun technique we're going to do. I've got a pencil, and then I've also got our pack of sea sponges. And then we have pure black, wicker white, purple, lavender, Parisian pink, cobalt blue, Calypso Sky, and we've got super glow, which is going to be really fun for this painting. Another thing too I have here is our printable template that's online. So if you're planning on painting this painting, you can print this out for free. We just tape it together and then we cut it out with some scissors, and we're going to use that as our guide for painting the mountains when we're finished. Or feel free to paint your own mountains. It's totally up to you. Either way is totally fine. All right, so let's get started painting. So the first paint we're going to add to our palette is going to be Calypso Sky. So I'm just going to add a small amount, probably about a nickel-sized amount to my palette, and we're using Calypso Sky right now. I love that color. And I'm going to take one of my sea sponges, and I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on it. You can see I don't want a ton of paint. So I'm going to try to blot some of it off. Can you see how much paint I kind of have? Not a ton.
And Jessie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the sponges while people are getting started?
I love these natural sponges. Can I get some paper towels too?
Yeah, sure.
I love these natural sponges. It comes in a variety pack by Folk Art. And like I said, they're natural, so they're all kind of different shapes and sizes, which makes it great. Sometimes I tear them if I want a different edge. It makes them great for whatever you're trying to do, if it's some sort of finish, or tonight we're going to be painting, a cosmos sort of scene. So yeah, I love these sponges. We haven't used them before in one of our paint nights, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Grab these paper towels. Okay, so see how I hardly have any paint on there, just a little bit, so we can kind of get started, and then we'll build it up as we go, because it'll be easier to add paint than it will be to remove it. So I'm going to start by making a sort of a cat eye shape with my Calypso Sky. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom left, and I'm going to start dabbing my canvas gently.
And Jessie, we have a question.
Sure.
By the way, hi everybody that's watching. We're seeing you. We got Georgia, Ohio, Tennessee, Ontario. But somebody has a question. Does the sponge need to be wet?
It's kind of up to you. I usually start with a dry sponge. It may help you if you want to dampen it a little bit, but I definitely don't want it to be sopping wet, because that's going to make my paint really wet and I'm not going to get this sponge texture. So yeah, feel free to dampen it a little if you feel like it's a little too dry for you, but I usually start with a dry sponge. So I'm kind of just gonna go and create really loosely. I'm just gonna kind of create the shape of my cosmos right now. I'm not putting a ton of paint down. I just wanna make sure I know what the shape's gonna look like. And like I said, I'm kind of doing this cat eye shape. You can see it's kind of like a slanted cat eye shape. I'm adding a little bit of paint as I go, a little bit more to my sponge. And I'm gonna kind of build this up a little, taking our time, because if you put a ton of paint on, like I said, it's a little bit hard to remove. It is easy, you can fix it for sure, but it's much easier to add paint than it is to remove it. So I'm gonna be building up. And don't forget, we're not putting a ton of paint on and we're not doing a ton of pressure either. We're just gently building it up. Sort of a tip if you are sponging on a canvas, or even if you're stenciling on a canvas, you're doing any sort of pouncing motion, you can see it's kind of like a drum here. You can put a thin book underneath and that gives it some support if you're doing it at home. If you have like a rocky table or something and it's driving you nuts trying to stencil or trying to sponge on a canvas, that's a little tip you can do at home. Just stick a book under there and that fills that space, so it's not, you don't have so much give anymore. And you can see I'm kind of holding my sponge. I've got a good grip on it. I'm holding it sort of in the middle. I probably will end up getting a good bit of paint on my hands for this painting because we're kind of getting right into it. We don't have the long stem of the long handle of the brush protecting our hands this time. So we're just sort of making this shape with our Calypso Sky. So you can make this as dark or as light as you want. You can kind of drag it a little if you want it darker in some places. I actually might just dip my sponge in a teeny bit of water just to dampen it.
So Jessie, while you're filling in your Calypso Sky, I just want to remind everybody, if you're just tuning in to our Let's Paint Live, our Cosmic Sky tonight, we are going to teach you how to do this painting in Jessie's going to teach you in just about an hour. And again, if you are running a little bit late or behind, don't worry, because after our live, you can watch this on demand on Facebook. Or tomorrow you can watch any of our Let's Paint Lives, including this painting, on our Plaid YouTube channel, where you can pause and rewind and take your time. Yeah. We've been talking here a lot about having time for yourself, me time. Painting is a great way to do that.
Absolutely, it's so relaxing.
So relaxing. It's a great way to relieve stress. It's a great way to spend time with your friends and your family. So we want everybody to enjoy it. So don't worry if you're like, oh no, I'm behind, or you're running a little bit late. Don't worry, because you can go back and watch any of these.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to remind everybody of that. And then also the link is below in the event, so you can purchase all these products also on plaidonline.com. So the sponges, the paint, the glow, and then also you can get your free downloadable pattern is there. So all that's available for you. Like I said, if you can't paint with us live, don't worry about it, because we got you covered.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know you're filling in, so I'll let you go.
So you can see I'm kind of just building up this Calypso Sky still. I've kind of started making my shape sort of irregular, because keep in mind that this is space and it's natural, and we want our shape to be more organic. We don't want it to be perfect, because that's going to make it look more realistic. So, and that's something that's good to keep in mind for this painting. Do not worry about things being perfect or being neat, because that's just not how they would look in space anyway. They're very random, they're very flowy, there's a lot of movement, so just kind of do what you think looks good. What do you think looks real for your painting? So I think I might stop here. So I've kind of got, like I said, I've got this cat eye, and then I brought it down a little bit so I can make some, irregular shapes in there later. So I'm going to go ahead and you can either grab one of your other sponges, or you can dip your sponge in the water, and I sort of wring it out as I go, which can get kind of messy, but I don't know, that doesn't bother me. Feel free to get up and go wash yours in the sink if you'd rather do that. But I don't like to get up in the middle of my painting. I like to stay where I am. So I'm just gonna wash it right off in my water basin. Okay, so the next color that we're gonna put on our palette is our Cobalt Blue. And that is the darker of our two blues. It's not the Calypso Sky, of course, we just used that one. This is the darker of the two, our Cobalt. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of that. Again, probably about another nickel-sized amount. We don't need a ton. So I'm gonna add, I've got my sponge pretty dry. You definitely, just popped away from me. You definitely don't want it to be sopping wet. You don't want to be wringing any water out of it. You want it to be, you know, fairly dry to the touch, because that's just going to get more water into your paint and onto your canvas, and I don't really like that. So I'm just going to grab some of my, I'm just picking up my Cobalt Blue the same way that I picked up my Calypso Sky. I'm just going to pick some up, and then I'm going to offload, is what we call it, onto my paper towel, and that just means that I'm taking some of the paint off of it. I'm picking some up, and then I'm taking some off onto my paper towel here. So I'm going to go around my Calypso Sky shape with this Cobalt Blue. I'm going to blend into the edges, and then I'm going to sort of fade the Calypso Sky into the black. So here, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start pouncing my blue, because of course this darker blue is sort of a color between the Calypso Sky and black. So it creates sort of a value almost, like sort of a gradient on your canvas. So see, I'm just going to go right around my blue. I'm going to blend it in there really softly. You see that? And I'm going to blend it into my black space area. And this painting is going to be a lot of that. It's going to be a lot of blending and building up, so just take your time. It's going to be a lot of layering.
Someone's asking what paint we're using.
Right now we're using Cobalt Blue. This is Folk Art Acrylic Cobalt Blue. It's this one here. It's a really pretty color. I love this color a lot. And on the black, it kind of pops. It's still dark, so it doesn't stand out nearly as much as the Calypso Sky, but it looks really beautiful against the black. It's kind of subtle against the black, which I like for this painting. See, I got a little too much there, so I'm going to try to blend that in a little bit, because that was more than I wanted. So I'm just going to try to blend that a little. So right now, don't forget, we are just going around our original Calypso Sky shape, and we are blending the edges of that with our sponge, our natural sea sponge, into our black canvas, our base coated canvas. Or maybe some of you even got a black canvas from the store, which is great too. But I just painted mine. So I'm just blending this. And as we get towards the bottom, don't forget, in our painting that you saw in the event on Facebook, we have a beautiful mountain range on the bottom. So we don't need to worry about going down there. It's not that the mountains are going to block our cosmos. We want to make sure there's color down there so that we can see the black against it. If we have a black bottom, we put black mountains on top, they're not going to pop out. They're not going to be any sort of contrast. So we do want to make sure that we bring the color all the way down to the bottom of the canvas so that we can actually see those mountains. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing on the top. I'm just blending it in. I like having a lot of the sponges when I'm using them to paint, just because sometimes I feel like, oh, this one's a little too wet or this one's too saturated in paint. So I want to wash it out and then sort of let it air dry, and so I can use one of the other sponges while I'm waiting. I kind of can just cycle through the different sponges in that value pack. That's why I like to have a few on hand, so I don't have to worry about, you know, having a wet sponge in an area where I don't want a wet sponge necessarily. And don't forget, we're using Cobalt Blue here.
And you're using a sea sponge.
We're using our Folk Art sea sponge, our natural sea sponge, which I love. Comes in a pack. There's like 5 in there, I think. And I use those for a lot of things. I love using those for any sort of textured areas like these. It makes it really easy, as opposed to using like a fan brush or something like that. I prefer a sea sponge to make this sort of look. And I'm just gently blending this in to my Calypso Sky. Don't forget, we're bringing it all the way down into the black too. You don't want to spend too much time on it, so I'm going to try to finish this up. Move that a little. Okay. So now I'm going to wash out my sponge. I've got my blue around, my Cobalt Blue around the Calypso Sky, and I like that. I like how it's sort of blending into the black. And we're going to go ahead and blend it even further into the black with the purple. The purple that we're going to be using is, I think it's just called purple actually, and it's really beautiful. It's nice and deep and dark, so it's going to look really, really cool against our black sky. So I'm just drying off my sponge. Got a little water on my canvas. I'm just wrapping it in a paper towel and squeezing it in my hand, trying to get that moisture out. because I don't, like I said, I don't want it to be sopping wet like I mentioned before.
So while Jessie is drying her sponge, we see everybody out there joining, and if you're painting along or watching and you're planning on painting after our live, how's everybody doing on time there? Are we going at a good pace for everybody that's painting along? How about out in our audience? Everybody doing good? So we have a full house again.
Everybody good? Awesome. I see a lot of people are done with that step, so I'm glad to see that.
Good. So we've got the two colors on the black canvas.
Yep, we've got Calypso Sky as our center shape, and then we went around it with the Cobalt Blue.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, so you got your sponge, and we're good on time. And again, if you aren't able to paint right along with us right now, don't forget that you can watch this after the Facebook Live on Facebook.
Yep.
And you can also watch it on our YouTube channel where you can pause and watch on demand at your time.
Yeah, make sure you ask questions now too so we can answer them so you have them in mind for when you do go to paint this painting.
Yeah, and we love everybody telling us where you are from and that you're painting with us.
I love it. All right, so the next color we're going to be using is just purple. This is a really pretty color. I'm going to just keep doing the same thing that I did. I'm going to add a little to I have my palette paper right here, but you can use a paper plate or what I even use like a piece of tin foil for your palette. That works too. I just have some palette paper here. So I put about a nickel-sized amount of purple onto which is the darker of our two purples, onto my palette paper. And I'm applying a little bit of paint just like we've been doing. We're going to be using this technique a lot. This is more going to be about how to build up color than it is about how to apply it, because a lot of it's going to be applied the same way until we get to the end. Then there's going to be some surprises. So we're just going to go around and bring this cobalt blue. See how pretty it is against that and how nice it looks against the black. I hope you guys can see it okay on camera, but if you're painting along, you can see that purple on the black looks really cool. It's kind of subtle, but it gives it a really rich texture, and it gives the black a lot more depth than just the flat black. So you want to bring it down, because don't forget, we definitely want color on the bottom here so that our mountains are going to pop when we go to add those at the end. So I'm just blending into the cobalt, and I'm blending into the background too. And don't forget, we're using folk art acrylic paints right now, and the color we're using is purple, just regular purple. But it looks so nice on our black background. I love these folk art paints because they're so thick and they're really creamy and they have a lot of body, and they're great for doing paintings like this. They're not thin and runny, which I really like, because sometimes it's hard to get this sort of texture with paint like that. So our paints are really beautiful for this sort of painting. And I'm just blending that cobalt blue into the black using my purple. These beautiful folk art colors. There's so many colors to choose from. It was kind of hard to narrow it down for this painting. I didn't want everyone to have to buy like 20 different paints, but all the colors are so pretty. There's so many options. It was kind of tricky, but I managed. So I'm just blending into the black. I'm going to go a little bit high up here because, like, see there, like it just would be plain black, and I want it to have a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to blend the purple in. So that gives us sort of like a cool space background, but it looks like there's something going on out there.
And I guess if you got too much paint, you could go back even with your black.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea, Kira. So if you had too much paint in one area, you could easily go back with black. You could probably wait for it to dry a little bit in that area and then just take your sponge and take your pure black and then just gently go over it, because then you would just add more black to the area, which we have on our areas because it's behind the paint we're adding right now. But that's a great idea. Just adding black on top would definitely dull out the tone down if you've got too much paint in an area that you don't like. We're just gently blending. But if you keep, only a little bit of paint on your folk art sea sponge and you take your time blending, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Like I said, it is much easier to add paint than it is to take it away. So, but it, of course, is possible. Okay, so I think that's good for the outside of my purple right now. I'm going to hang on to the purple right now. We're going to keep using it, and I'm going to add some purple inside of the inside of the Calypso Sky, this light blue, and we're going to start going into the center of our shape here. of our little galaxy. So I want kind of a smaller area. I don't want like such a big sponge area. So what's really cool, like I said, about our natural sea sponges is that they're all different shapes. So you could find a different shaped sponge in your pack and kind of grab the edge, or I just like to sort of pinch my sponge so I get a smaller shape when I'm sponging. Can you kind of see how I've got it pinched? It's a little messy, but that's okay. Paint's wash, we can just wash it right off our hands with soap and water easily when we're done. So I'm gonna add a little bit and I'm just gonna pinch it. I just got it pinched so that creates a smaller surface area to sponge with instead of that big one that we were using. I just have a tiny little sponge now. And I'm gonna go ahead and see how I can make sort of a thin line instead of the big areas that we were sponging with. And I'm just gonna sort of go inside of our Calypso Sky shape with my purple. And not adding too much of the paint to our sponge. These beautiful natural sea sponges. Another thing I think I said in the beginning is sometimes I even like, if I have like a really big sponge in my pack and I don't like the shape of it, I even sometimes tear them. I don't want to, of course, tear them into pieces because I still want to use them. But sometimes if I want like a flatter edge and I don't have one like that, because they're natural, you know, you can't control the shape. They're all the way they are. So sometimes I even tear them a little bit and create the edges that I like for the painting that I'm trying to do. I do that pretty often, actually. Or if I have a really big one, sometimes I'll tear it into two, so I have two smaller ones. But we are just going inside with purple right now, Folk Art acrylic purple. We are going inside of our Folk Art Calypso Sky. See, we just have sort of the inner edge there. And that's kind of dulling it into the darkness there.
So I want to just say hi while you're filling in your
Sure.
purple. We've got Penny is greetings from Buffalo Grove, and
Penny.
she said her ladies at her church she thinks would love this. So Penny, you should get your group of ladies together and do this with us.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can watch it on demand.
It'll be a blast.
Yeah, we've got Lynn. Hi, Lynn. We have Lucy. These are her favorite colors.
Oh, great.
I love
Me
that.
too.
We love these too. Carrie, Jackie, Gina. So hi, everybody
Hey,
out
guys.
there. Thanks for joining us.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, don't forget to hashtag Let's Paint and hashtag Plaid Crafts so we can see what you paint when you're done.
We can't wait to see them.
Yeah.
So right now what we're doing is we have our sponge and we're pinching it so we have a small surface to sponge with, and we are using purple, Folk Art purple, and we are going on the inside of our Calypso Sky shape that we did in the beginning. We're starting to build our shape up into the middle now. And we really kind of want to cover the black up in the middle. That's what we're going for. We don't want it to be solid, of course, but we're trying to gently build up the color so that we don't see too much of that black. Because as it goes in, it gets a little more opaque. So we're gonna, as it goes out, you can see all the space behind it, but it's gonna be fairly solid as we get towards the middle. And I kind of run out of purple here, but I think that's okay. I think I'm kind of done there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wash my sponge off again. And again, I'm just washing mine right in my water basin. I'm just sort of wringing it out with my hand. Feel free to go to your sink and rinse it out, or you can just sort of, you can pick up a new sponge, one of your other sponges from the pack. I just like to wring mine right out in the water basin though. And then I'm gonna dry it off in my paper towel, just like we've been doing. I'm gonna wrap in the paper towel and then I'm gonna squeeze. And you don't wanna get water everywhere, so make sure you wring most of it out into your water basin. So I'm just squeezing my sponge, trying to dry it off. Okay, so it's pretty dry now. Again, you don't want it sopping wet when you're using it. That's how I like it anyway. We don't want too much water on our canvas. So the next color we're gonna grab as we kind of go gradually into the center of our galaxy. I still have my purple over here. I am going to pick up this beautiful pink color. This is Folk Art Parisian Pink. It's really bright and really fun. So this is kind of gonna be the pop in the center. So I'm gonna add again about a nickel-sized amount of this to my palette. And I'm gonna take my sponge and I'm gonna pick up some Parisian Pink. And just like we've been doing, I'm gonna apply a little bit to my natural sea sponge. And then I'm gonna offload, just taking some of the paint off onto my paper towel. And I'm gonna try to do a bit of a smaller area again here. So I'm gonna squeeze it a little so I have less surface area, you can see there, as opposed to that big flat side. I don't want all of that touching my canvas. So I'm gonna squeeze it just so a little bit's gonna touch the canvas. And I'm gonna start blending right inside of the purple that we just put down. And this is gonna blend nicely. And the good thing about this painting is that it really doesn't matter if the paint beneath it is wet or dry. So if you're going slowly, or if you have to stop and come back for some reason, if you get a distraction or you have somewhere to be, you can stop and then come back to this painting, and it's okay if all the colors dry beneath. You can just keep layering on top of it. Or like we're doing now, of course, we're just going straight through it, and so the paints beneath are probably still a little wet, and that's okay too. They're just sort of blending together. So I'm gonna add some pink here. You don't have to go all the way around with your pink, it's totally up to you. We've kind of gone all the way around with each layer so far of paint that we've done, but maybe I won't for this one. I'm just gonna add a little bit in some areas. But I wanna build this up sort of bright because I really like this pink and I want it to be pretty bright.
So we have a special shout out.
Okay.
We have a special shout out. Floor said, can you say hi to my son Joseph, who is in Texas? He's
Aww.
painting this painting to do a Gardens of the Galaxy painting.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Very
so
cool. Hey, Joseph.
Hi, yeah, we can't wait to see. Don't forget to hashtag us so we can see what you've made after your
Absolutely.
painting.
Very cool.
Yeah, also Elizabeth says howdy.
Howdy, Elizabeth.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Steve. Hi,
Hey.
Andy and Jackie. So hi, everybody. I didn't want to
for joining
interrupt you
us.
from
No,
your
that's
paint,
okay.
but we're so excited that everybody's watching us, and we love to hear from everybody.
Absolutely.
So, and to see everybody spin on this, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love the Guardians of the Galaxy idea. I've never even thought of it. What a great idea, though.
Yeah, we're kind of combining cosplay and our Let's Paint a
Yeah,
little bit.
I love it. Okay, cool. So we're continuing right now with our Parisian pink, our folk art Parisian pink, and I'm squeezing my sea sponge again so that I have less surface area because I don't want all of that touching my canvas. So I've only got a little bit touching the canvas because I'm sort of pinching it with my fingers. And I'm not doing it all the way around with this pink. I'm just going in a couple little areas so it looks a little more natural and a little more random. We don't want it to be too perfect looking because then it might not look as realistic. And don't forget, we're sort of layering as we go. I'm gonna go into the center a little here because I think that will look good. I think that will look like a galaxy. And a lot of times when I'm painting things like this, you definitely don't have to, but I really like to maybe print out a couple pictures of galaxies as reference, or you can just pull them up on your phone or your computer while you're painting. I just think it helps, you know. Sometimes if you're like, gee, I don't really know, where that cloud would go, you can use some, Google Images or whatever, wherever you like to find your images to just get some reference, and that helps a lot sometimes for inspiration. I do that very often with my paintings. Just pull ideas from different images so it looks more realistic. Okay, so we just did our Parisian pink inside of that layer of purple we did, and you can see I kind of did it a little more random here. I brought it a little more thick into the middle because I really like that pink and I want it to pop when we're done, and I have it maybe even a little more solid than my other colors. So next we're gonna wash our sponge again. I keep washing between colors. And like I said, feel free to pick up a new sponge, but you don't want to let the paint dry in there, of course, because...
Someone's asking what's the ideal size of the sponge that you're using?
Oh, sure. So the ones that come in the value pack are usually about this size. You can see the ones I have here. They're usually about all the same size. So any of these will work totally fine. It depends on how much area you want to paint at once, basically. So if you're doing a small area, you can use one of these tiny sponges. If you're painting a larger area, you can use one of these. You can cut it. If you wanted, more small sponges, feel free to cut them, or you can tear them if you want a more natural edge. But I'm using sort of medium size for the pack. So in your pack, it probably, there's gonna be a lot that are about this size, and that's the size that I'm using right now. So I'm just wringing out my sponge, my natural sea sponge, in my water basin. Like I said, feel free to go wash it off in the sink if you prefer. And then I'm going to fold it in my paper towel. I don't wanna waste too much, I'm just using that one. And I'm gonna wring it. I'm just gonna squeeze it, try to get the paper towel to absorb most of that water. Because we don't want a sopping wet sponge to paint with, because that'll just get paint all over your canvas, and we don't want that. Okay, so I've got my sponge pretty dry. It's damp. It's not totally dry, but there's definitely no water coming out of it. So now I'm going to add to my palette, I've got a little collection of paper towels here. I'm going to do Wicker White. So I'm going to put that on my palette. You can do about a dime size amount of the Wicker White. And I'm going to pick that up on my sponge. And you don't want a ton of paint on there. So I kind of picked up too much, so I'm going to make sure that I offload a lot because I don't want all this paint. I picked up more than I was planning on picking up, so I'm going to make sure I offload a lot of that onto my paper towel. And now I'm going to pinch it again because we're still kind of doing a smaller area in the middle here. And I'm going to fill this entire center with the white. This is going to be sort of the brightest area of our painting. And I kind of want it to be fairly solid. I don't want to see a lot of the black in the background. So I'm going to add the white to the center, just kind of following whatever shape it was that you decided to make for your Parisian pink shape. I'm just filling in that black area. And you want to blend it into the pink because you don't want the too harsh of sort of stripe looking areas on your painting. You want it all to be pretty blended with each other. All of the layers of color that we're doing. And I picked up a little bit of pink, but that's okay because I'm trying to blend them together anyway. I kind of like that. I kind of like the pink hue that I'm getting by blending my sponge onto the wet pink on my canvas. It doesn't bother me. And I've got a lot of white here. So you can see there's not, I've been doing a really light sponging of the white, and it's, we're painting white on black. So to get a really bright white, I'm kind of going to go back over it just with another layer of paint because I really want to see that white. I don't want any of the black coming through making it look gray. So we're just going to build that up. We're going to do another light layer of white so that it really pops off the painting. Looks really bright in the middle. Sort of blending it. And now, while I have my white out, I'm kind of done painting the center of it, but I want to make some sort of nebulas, I think they're called, some sort of space clouds going around it to give some more interest to our painting. So you can see my hands are covered in paint, but that's okay, it'll wash right off. I'm going to pinch my sponge again so I have sort of a smaller surface area to paint with. And I'm just going to do very gently, because I don't want to put too much paint down, I'm going to do maybe a cloud there. And you want it to be pretty irregular. I'm doing it sort of long because that's the way when I was looking at galaxies, that's what they looked like. So sort of a long, fluffy looking cloud, just dab really gently. We're just putting a couple of those around the outside of it because I saw a lot of that when I was looking up galaxies for this painting. I'm going to do another one over here, maybe a little bit lighter. Really light clouds. And maybe another one here. I'm going to put a little bit there too, I think. That'll really pop up against our mountains. Don't forget, we're going to put our mountains at the bottom. So I like that. I like how that looks. So I'm going to wash out my sponge again. It's a lot of sponge washing for this one. But again, feel free. If you don't have a big water basin like this, and you need to go to the sink, feel free to go, wash it off in your sink, or feel free to you can even stick it in a cup of water to keep it from drying out and pick up a new sponge. That's great too. That's why I love the value pack, because it comes with a handful of sponges. So when you're doing something like this, you don't have to wait every single time for your sponge to dry if you're trying to paint with a dry sponge. That's why I recommended getting the value pack.
Yep. And so while everybody is filling in their clouds, John is going to walk around the room and let's see what everybody is doing here in the audience. So we've got all different kind of shapes and sizes, galaxies.
Wow, they look great.
Yeah, they look really good. Everyone's is so different. I love it. You hear a lot of pouncing also with the sponges, everybody tap, tap, tapping. So it looks really good. So again, we hope everybody's enjoying us tonight as we are learning how to paint with Jessie Cosmic Skies. And again, this is part of our larger Let's Paint program. So if you want to find out more about our Let's Paint program, go to plaidonline.com/Let's Paint, and we've got a whole entire free online education program.
Yeah.
So if this is your first time tuning in and you're enjoying this and you want to learn more, we've got a ton of free education, skill builders and master classes, and we've got so much content there. We've got Donna Dewberry, Andy Jones, we have Jessie and other guest artists that'll teach you how to paint if you've never picked up a paintbrush before.
Yep, all levels,
yeah,
for sure.
Or if you're an expert painter and you just want to learn more and take your skills to the next level. So it's a really great program. So don't forget to check that out. So just want everybody to get caught up with their clouds that they're painting.
Yeah.
So you can keep going on our Cosmic Skies and we'll check back in. We love hearing from everybody. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Okay, great. So I've dried off my sponge. I cleaned it. And it's dry again. There's no water coming off on my hands. It's a little bit damp, but that's okay. So the next color we're gonna put on our palette is Lavender, which is the lighter of the two purples that we have in our palette today. So I'm gonna put a little bit of lavender onto my palette. Look how, I love these paints so much. So we're gonna pick it up again. Kind of running out of space here because of the way that I'm offloading my sponge, but that's okay. So I'm just picking up a little bit like we've been doing, and then I'm going to offload onto my paper towel. And I'm going to blend the white sort of, see it's kind of like a really harsh line there. I don't like that. So I'm going to blend my white into my pink. And as we're doing this, if there's a color that you really like in this palette, if you really love the Calypso Sky, or the hot pink, our Parisian pink, feel free to go back and add a little bit more of that on top to brighten it up. If you've kind of ended up covering it up, feel free to go back and add more of that color. Make sure that it really pops in your painting because it's your painting. You want it to look the way that you want it to look. So if there's a color that you prefer, then go ahead and make that sort of the dominant color in your painting. I might end up doing that too, actually, because I'm kind of covering up my pink a little. I kind of got some white over the edges, and I really like that hot pink in the Galaxy. So I'm sort of blending them all together. I'm kind of going down into my blue a little. I'm just blending the Folk Art Lavender into between the Wicker White and the Parisian pink, sort of blending it into the white here. You just want it to be really soft. We don't want any hard edges here. We want it all to kind of flow and look like it has some movement. So look, I'm not even going to clean off this sponge right now. I'm just going to dab it off and try to get some excess paint off. And then I'm going to go right back in with my Parisian pink because I want to add some pink to that because I covered it up more than I like. So see, you can even do that. You don't have to necessarily clean your sponge each time, especially if you're layering paints, because they're going to blend together on your canvas anyway, if they're wet on wet. So that's just a little trick. I like to clean them just to kind of start fresh each time, but it works both ways. As long as you don't have a ton of paint in there when you go to pick up a new color, you won't have any problems. And again, we're just doing a light amount at a time. We're building it up because it's much easier, especially once we get into the center of this, to add paint than it is to take it away. So I'm making sure I have that pink back in, and I'm making sure that I'm keeping sort of a random shape. I don't want it to get too symmetrical or too geometric looking. I want it to look natural and random like it really is in space, because that wouldn't be symmetrical for sure. So going into the middle, maybe come down a little over here. I'm just trying to make that shape look a little more organic. I'm just gonna take some more paint off. Okay, so I've added the paint there, the pink. Okay, so I like that. So I'm going to wash my sponge off so that the paint doesn't dry in it. I'm gonna dry it off. So the next thing we're gonna do, some of you are probably wondering why we have a toothbrush in our list of supplies tonight. If you've never used a toothbrush for painting, you're gonna use it tonight. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Hopefully you've never done it before, because it's kind of cool. A lot of people I think in our audience have done it before, because I saw them saying, oh, are we gonna do this with the toothbrush before we started? So we're gonna be using our toothbrush. I just got this one at the dollar store. But if you have an old toothbrush at home, you can feel free to clean it and then make that your painting toothbrush. So I'm going to add a little bit more white, Wicker White, Folk Art, to my palette.
And so you might want to just remind everybody, you might want to cover your workspace a little bit with a toothbrush.
Yes, if you're on like a really nice table, your dining room table or something like that, you probably want to put some paper down below. That's a really good point here. I'm just used to getting paint everywhere. You probably want to protect your surface. A really good idea is to put a trash bag under you. It's like a nice big open plastic area. I use those all the time when I'm trying to protect my workspace, and then I fold it up and I reuse it over and over again. Plastic tablecloth, anything like that, because it's about to get a little bit messy. So you can see here, I don't know if hope you guys can see it, I'm just dipping my toothbrush into my water basin because I'm getting it wet, and I want a good bit of water on there. And I'm gonna go ahead and put that right onto my palette and pick up some white. So you want a nice, fairly thin consistency. You definitely want it thinner than the Folk Art paint comes out of the bottle, for sure, because that's really thick and creamy and that won't really work for this technique. So I'm picking up a little more a little more water, and then I'm mixing it into my white. It kind of is like I'm brushing teeth. I'm mixing the paint with the bristles of the toothbrush. So once you have that, this is about to get messy, so once you have that, you're gonna take your toothbrush, and I'm gonna practice on my palette first, because I don't wanna do it right on here, especially if you haven't done it before. I'm going to take my finger, and I'm going to rake it across the bristles. So watch this. I'm gonna do it on my purple so you can see. Can you see? A lot of people call this fly specking, but we're going to use this to make our stars tonight. Can you see that sort of little splattered speckles that you get? You'll be able to see it much better on your canvas, but if you're practicing at home, you hopefully can see it on your palette, and you're getting a good feel for the texture that you need and how you're going to be moving your thumb across the bristles onto your canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start. You don't want it to be too wet, because even when I was prepping this and I was designing this painting, I had too wet of paint on my paintbrush and it kept dripping onto my canvas, and I don't want that. I kept having to clean it off and fix it. So you want it thick enough where it's not running out of your paintbrush, but thin enough where it'll definitely speckle your painting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start doing that. You see how that looks like there's millions of tiny stars in our galaxy? That's how you get that awesome star effect. Because you could sit here and paint all the stars, but you probably couldn't get them that tiny. And this gives you a variety of sizes, so it looks like there's stars really far away, and there's stars up close to you, and there's big stars and small stars. And I think it looks really realistic. I think it looks a lot like space. So I love this technique for when I'm painting galaxies. So I'm going to cover my whole painting in this. You can do as many or as few stars as you want. I like to do a lot. You can see I'm kind of getting it everywhere. That's okay. That's why you need to protect your workspace at home. You can do it more concentrated in some areas. It's your painting. You can totally make this galaxy however you think it should look. So I did quite a bit of stars on mine. I've got some bigger ones going. I like that. You can go kind of fast. Sometimes you get bigger ones, or you can go slow and get tiny stars. Just kind of play with it. You can't really mess up. So I have lots of stars now. So now I'm going to put my toothbrush into the water, and I'm going to just use the water basin to rinse my fingers off a little bit. Wasn't that fun? I see everybody out there is going crazy with it. Okay. So take your time doing the stars. Like I said, do as many or as little as you want. Once I have that done, I'm going to take, hopefully you have your flat brush with you. It was on our list. We use that to base coat our canvas, and we're going to use it in a second. I'm going to use this brush, and I'm going to use the bottom of it. I'm going to dip it into my white paint, and I'm going to make a few larger stars. So this looks like stars that are, oh, that was a really big one, that are up close to where we are in space looking at this galaxy. So if you press down, you're going to get a big one. If you just sort of like very gently touch your canvas, you're going to get tinier stars. but they're definitely bigger than the ones we just made with our toothbrush, and I kind of like the variety of sizes. I think it looks really cool and really realistic. So you want to have them up front, in front of your galaxy, and so it looks like they're kind of behind your galaxy. You want it to be really random. You don't want them evenly spaced because that's not what stars look like. I know you've all seen the night sky. You know, they're just everywhere. They're all over the place. So make sure it looks random because that's, like I said, again, how it's going to look really realistic. So I'm just using the end of my brush, the end of my flat brush. You can use really any brush for this. And I'm dipping it in my white paint, and I'm just painting little stars. You don't need to worry about putting too many in the bottom because don't forget we're about to put our mountains down there. So don't worry about that. Okay, I think that's good. So once you have that done, your painting should be pretty dry now. We've got, you know, our stars are certainly wet, but the paint beneath it should not be that wet at all. So I'm going to take some of this off because I don't want it to get into my mountains. So we had this printable template we talked about in the beginning. This is the one that we have online that you can download and print. And we did that, and then we just taped it together, and then we cut it out so it looks like this. So that's what all of you should have at home too, hopefully. Or you can draw your own mountains, that's totally fine. So all we're gonna do, there's no really special technique to this. We're gonna lay it down, and we're gonna use our pencil to trace it. And this is gonna be the guide for painting in our mountains. So I'm just quickly, does not need to be perfect because mountains are just like space. They're not perfect, they're organic, and they're all different shapes and sizes. So this is another part of the painting that you truly cannot mess up. So I'm just quickly and gently following the edge of the paper that I've cut out on my template. But you can, like I said, certainly if you feel comfortable drawing your own mountain range, feel free to do so. I just made this one for you guys, just in case you didn't feel comfortable painting your own mountains, which I understand. So now we're gonna add some pure black, or some folk art pure black to our palette. Probably about a quarter size amount. And all we're gonna do right here is we're gonna use our flat brush, our 1-inch flat brush, but any flat brush will do. I think we have the 3-pack. You can use the 3/4 inch too. Any of them will really work for this. We're gonna load our brush up. We don't want a ton of paint on our brush. And we're just gonna follow that edge. We're gonna start here and look at our pencil line. Hopefully you can see yours. I'm sure you can't see mine from the camera just because it's pretty faint. But I can see it, and surely you can see yours at home. So I'm just taking the edge of my brush, applying more paint as I need it, and I'm just using the edge of it as a chisel to follow that line. And again, do not worry about messing it up because mountain ranges are not perfect. Your painting doesn't have to be either. And I'm going to fill in the bottom as I go. I've got another one coming down here. And if you feel like you maybe made your pencil lines a little too thin and you can't really see them, they're a little faint, feel free to put your template back and maybe thicken those lines a little. Or you could even really use like a permanent marker for this, a black permanent marker, because you'll be able to paint over the line anyway. So if that's easier for you to see, if it's easier for you to follow, that's something you can do at home too. So I'm just following this line pretty carefully, but not perfect. Kind of jumping around a little. I'm just following the line, and I'm going to paint everything below that line with my pure black. And that's going to look like the silhouette of our mountains in the front of our painting, in the foreground, and then wet my brush a little bit because the paint's dragging a little. That's another trick. You can just wet your brush if you feel like your paint is dragging a little bit because it's really thick. Just wet your brush a little, and that helps it glide across the canvas. But it's got great coverage. Look at this black. I'm just doing, on top of these really bright colors, I'm doing one thin coat, and it's covering it completely. I love that about folk art.
You can really see the contrast on the camera.
Oh,
so
good.
If you're worried you can't see it,
Good.
I think everybody at home hopefully can see the contrast
Yeah,
of the black mountains on the canvas.
Awesome.
It's really great.
Yeah. So we're just filling in, like I said, all we're doing is we trace the line with a pencil from our free printable template that you can print right right from the Facebook page. I think it leads you to the link. So you can just print that out for free. And we use that, we trace the edge of it. So we have these beautiful mountains, and now we're just using our flat brush to follow our pencil line and fill in everything below the pencil line with pure black. Okay, so I've got all of my mountains painted, so now I just need to go into the bottom and make sure. And the reason we did that, of course, if you think about layering paintings, there wouldn't be any stars in front of your mountains. That's why we did that last. You painted everything in the background, and this is the only thing that's in the foreground. Maybe it's like a different planet mountains. Maybe it's, it's just up to your imagination. So I'm just filling in the black beneath my line that I just drew with pencil. And just really simple. There's nothing fancy here. So you don't need to spend too much time on it. It's a very simple technique. So then now I have my mountains in. See how easy that was to do? And like I said, you can feel free to use a pencil to just draw it freehand. It's totally up to you. So now, I think the last thing we're gonna do is we're going to use this awesome product called Super Glow, which is so fun. So what this is, it is glow-in-the-dark paint. So when you paint it onto your canvas, it charges, once it dries, it charges in the light, so leave it in the light for a little while, and then you flip the lights off and it glows in the dark. So anywhere on the canvas that we put this will glow in the dark, which is so cool. So for mine, I'm just gonna add a little bit to it because I think it's gonna be a kind of cool contrast, so you can see the space, and then when you shut the lights off, you just see the stars. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put some of this on my palette. You can see it's sort of like a yellowy color. It's mostly white though. So I usually like to put it on top of white because I think that the white really brightens it. I like the way it does that. So I'm gonna I'll just pick up a new brush. I'm gonna use the end of my brush again, and I'm gonna pick up some of this Folk Art Super Glow, and I'm gonna put it where I put my big stars. I'm gonna put it right on top of those so that these big stars that I added at the end with the end of my brush, when I turn the lights off after this painting dries, those are gonna glow in the dark, and I think that's gonna be really beautiful. It's gonna be really cool. It's awesome for if you hang it in your bedroom, you can see the glowing stars at night when you turn the lights off. This paint is so fun. You can stencil with it. You can use it for paintings like this. You can paint things solid with it and they'll glow in the dark. It's a really awesome paint. So I'm just like we did before, I'm just adding this on top of those larger stars. You can add it to the smaller stars too. You probably could even do this fly speckling with this. So I'm just doing that. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add it to some of the clouds too, because I want it to be a good bit of, so I'm gonna add it to those space clouds that I did. Just a tiny bit, because then when we turn the lights off, those are gonna glow in the dark too, and it's gonna be awesome.
I wish we could turn the lights off here in the studio.
I wish it would dry fast enough so that we could, but you guys will see at home, don't worry. Take my word for it, it's gonna be really cool. So there you have it. Don't forget to sign your painting, and that is Cosmic Sky.
Thanks, Jessie. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I can't wait to see what, let me get in the camera here. Can't wait to see what everybody creates at home. So don't forget to hashtag your project with Let's Paint and hashtag Plaid Crafts, because we can't wait to see everybody's cosmic skies. And we want to show you all a preview of what we're going to be painting next month in August. So August 1st, we're going to be painting Summer Blossoms, and the event listing is up on our Facebook page, so you can check that out and get all your supplies so you're ready to paint with us. Kirsten will be joining us actually for this one, so Jessie will probably be in the audience next month. But we're really excited. Two totally different paintings, so a little bit for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we hope everybody enjoyed us. If you are painting along live or just watching and you're planning on painting when you have some me time, and we'll see you guys next week or next month.
Next month.
Next
See you guys.
month. Bye.